Hello and welcome to another edition of the Steelers Depot live stream. I am Alex Kozora. Joining me as always is Dave Bryan of SteelersDepot.com. As the Pittsburgh Steelers clinched a playoff spot in less than exciting fashion, losing to the Philadelphia Eagles 27-13 on Sunday. Pittsburgh now 10-4 on the season, but again clinched that playoff spot because of the Dolphins and Colts loss. We thank them for their service and their helpfulness because Pittsburgh certainly did not help their cause yesterday. Dave, how you doing? Thanks for being here.
I'm doing fine. I'm gearing myself up for these two exciting Monday night games between
there's
the
two
Bears,
tonight.
Bears and the Vikings and the Falcons and the Raiders here in Las Vegas. It's no, who am I kidding? I mean, I'll watch them, but could be sorting through some defensive all 22 is my date tonight.
All right, let me get my ducks in a row here, pull up the video on my end. Again, we're here till 8 p.m. Eastern time. You can send us a super chat if you want to get to the front of the line to have your questions asked and answered. No obligation to do so, of course, but it's always appreciated. If not, just drop your questions in the chat, and Dave and I will get to them and get to as many as we can. You guys could at least like this video, subscribe to the channel, and of course, check out the site on screen, SteelersDepot.com. Would really appreciate that. So we'll start off here with our friend Mike Adesso. A couple of questions, comments in. He says his new favorite Tomlinism is "it's a loss, let's not be dramatic." Can we maybe apply this to the chat tonight? We'll see. So far, looking pretty good overall. One loss, but with how quick this schedule is, playing the Ravens on Saturday and then the Chiefs on the Wednesday after on Christmas Day, these things can stack up. And so the next really week and a half is going to tell us a lot about Pittsburgh's season, Dave.
Neither one of us are surprised by them losing the game. I did not envision the lopsidedness as far as snap counts and time of possession and some of the other minor little things, so many 3 and outs to start the game and all like that. Not that I go around trying to design losses for them, but I certainly wouldn't have wanted the defense out on the field for damn near 80 snaps on with a shorter week coming against divisional team like the Ravens, and one that if you win it, you win the division, and then turn around Christmas after that and all. So I mean, it's okay to be disappointed. I thought they would have played better than the way they played, and going through the offensive all 22 already, 1.5 times. I'm not shocked from what I saw on the TV copies overall. I will say that on a couple of those runs, I think specifically a couple of the toss plays to Jaylen Warren, they are blocked up a tiny bit better. A couple of those could have seemed like they could have hit for some additional yardage. But when you only run 40-something plays and you had 2 sacks in there, you had 3 tip balls, that's 5 plays already off of that 40-something. You had 1 throwaway out of bounds. You had 2 that looked like they were completed that weren't completed over to each side of the field. You see what I'm going on? You start whittling down, and then as you already outlined on Twitter, you broke down all the numerous tosses that this team had. You throw in a couple of passing plays, and that's it. I mean, that's all they did on the offensive side of the football. So very disappointing they weren't able to run more plays, and obviously, the defense didn't play well at all.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Of the 41, which is already the fewest Pittsburgh's had in a game since 1991, how many of those were essentially non-plays, whether that's the bat downs where nothing really happened? Obviously, the play didn't get the ball didn't get in somebody's hand besides the quarterback. How about the number of 3rd and longs they were in, where it's 3rd and 18, where, it's a play, but it's...
Give up down.
You're playing for a punt at that point. You're playing field position. So they probably had about 30 actual tangible plays of something could happen and someone got the ball in their hands to potentially make a play, which is a bad... We're twisting the knife at this point, but
right.
You guys get the idea of this one. But I will say, just to kind of get to Mike's point, Saturday night we're going to feel one of two ways. Either like, hey, Pittsburgh won, they won the division, they swept Baltimore, life is great, or they lost to Baltimore, they've dropped 2 in a row.
The sky's falling.
The sky's falling, moved Albuquerque, as you say. Yeah, they beat the Browns and they beat the New York teams and the Bengals, but they lost to the Eagles and the Ravens, and they got the Chiefs next, and they're a pretender, not a contender. That'll be the narrative that comes up, So just kind of a preview of what Saturday night, Sunday morning's going to look like, one of two ways. And Mike also asking about Dante fighting the back injury, leaving this many games now. Maybe it's time to either rest him or dress Trice. I know it's been a numbers game, but at this point, got to bench Robinson or Moon for Trice. Yeah, Pittsburgh really lived dangerously with thin corners. Jackson doesn't play, then I would expect obviously Trice to get a helmet. If not, if Jackson can play, it just depends on other injuries. They got a bunch of them right now, so it's really hard to say.
Yeah, with there being 6 players that Mike Tomlin went over today, obviously 3 of those players missed the last game in Ogunjobi, Pickens, and Elliott. So we'll have to see what happens there. And then, the 3 new ones with the thing with Fields is one of the quarterbacks is going to be inactive. And I would think even if you would imagine, let's say Fields isn't in great shape, he'll end up inactive as a number 3 in case of emergency type situation there. So at least that's one kind of lower down the rung, if you will. But it's so, as you stated, if Dante Jackson can't play and he's inactive, well, that's an easy helmet for helmet when it comes to Trice. So it doesn't feel like we'll get to a situation where there's elevations by the middle of this week, but a lot can change, obviously, depending on how many of these guys are injured. This team will need at least 5 inactive players, assuming they have 53 still on the active roster. And then, obviously, if elevations happen, 1 for each one of those that are elevated.
And I probably misstated Mike's point a little bit to say, even if Jackson plays, dress Trice, because Jackson keeps getting hurt and keeps leaving, and then you're kind of down really thin at outside cornerback. There's Pierre, Sutton in a pinch, but you're really looking thin in the secondary. So I get your point. We'll see a lot of variables. I just want to get a good feel of the health of the team going into this game before we start predicting active and inactives based off of elevations and, again, just general health, who's available. But fair point, Mike. Let's see. Next question comes from, we got a 3-parter, but I only see 2 parts right now from LV. He says, love my Steelers and Mike Tomlin, but are you telling me our professional, nicely paid receivers can't catch 4 or 5-yard catches over the middle? Mike Williams was a star caliber wide receiver. Are you telling me that he regressed that much? Part 2, I get that Roman Wilson is a rookie, but he really can't learn 10 routes. We aren't expecting him to cure cancer. Look at Malik Neighbors making plays. So a lot of general frustration about the lack of involvement of the wide receivers. Calvin Austin caught 5 passes. Nobody else had more than 1 at wide receiver yesterday. Dave, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, you go back to how many wide receivers are you going to carry on your 53, and then obviously you got an inactive list to deal with, and you've got a guy in Roman Wilson who obviously missed a chunk of training camp and the whole get on the train thing. He's not a special teams asset. That's another strike against him overall, and that's him in a nutshell. I wouldn't expect to see him unless you have yet another wide receiver injury here in addition to Pickens. But even so, they'd have to open up the window on him and get him practicing again. And it's just, with a rookie like that, it's just so hard. So it feels like a lost season for him, much in the same way that Calvin Austin was right out of shoot. But I mean, Calvin Austin has rebounded from that to his credit there. Mm-hmm. And obviously you'll hope for the same situation with Roman Wilson next year. Now, Mike Williams, I mean, we just stated that you only had 40-something snaps yesterday, and Mike Williams was on the field for 15 of them, and I think a couple of those were sacks, and he was targeted twice. It's probably good that one of those balls didn't make it to him over to the left side. It might have been picked, one of those balls that were tipped. I don't know if you've gone back and seen that yet. And then obviously I think he had the last catch of the game. Didn't Mike Williams, the last offensive play on the 3rd down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that 15-yard catch on 3rd and 22.
Right, to Mike Williams. So, yeah, look, I mean, I thought he'd have more targets than he has up until this point, but this team decided yesterday play a lot of heavy personnel, and you're not seeing Mike Williams much of any in 2 wide receiver sets, and we'll see if that continues. So, at least based, I guess, and I think you said this earlier during the podcast today, based on the amount of offensive plays that they actually ran against the Eagles, he actually played the highest percentage, I think, that he's played since they acquired him. And, 15 doesn't sound like it a lot, but when it's about 33% of your snaps, right?
Yeah, it was 35%. Not to be confused with a high percentage of snaps, but
Right.
the highest that he's played. And we got the charting back from Tommy just a couple of minutes ago. I just know he's not playing in those heavy packages, which are still predominantly rundown situations. Now, I completely disagree with Pittsburgh's approach yesterday about coming out heavy and trying to impose their will and stay in their personality against the Eagles front. I think that was we talked about that. That's not even the benefit of hindsight of us going, oh, look at us, how smart we are to armchair quarterback this thing. It's not. We talked about this openly Friday. You cannot be heavy, cannot play in a sardine can and try to beat the Eagles at their own game, especially without George Pickens to be that threat over the top. And Pittsburgh stubbornly attempted to do so every step of the way, and you get what you get when that happens. All right, next question comes from, and again, just a reminder to like this stream and bring as many of Steelers Nation into the chat, and hopefully George Pickens can come back soon. Matt says, why aren't we using Jaylen Warren more, and what can we do to improve the passing game, minus getting Pickens back, of course? Yeah, in terms of Warren, it's a little bit of Mike Williams-like. I don't know how many snaps Warren had exactly yesterday. He had 4 carries, which Najee only had 6, and Patterson had 2, so it wasn't, he was right there in the middle, and you just didn't have the volume of plays yesterday to get guys on the field. And Harris comes on first and Warren after, and, just kind of the way things go. So I thought they were using Warren more effectively previously. I thought against the Browns game, I thought Warren was used pretty effectively, and he looked like his old self when he was getting back to health. It's really hard to talk about playing time from this Eagles game just simply because when you run 41 plays, there's no consistency. You don't get a first down to the second quarter. You're just not getting in rhythm. You're not getting first downs. You're not getting substitutions in. You're not running your whole playbook. Your call sheet becomes so limited. I get the frustration for sure, and I didn't love seeing Patterson used a little bit later in the game, but we're talking a small subset of plays out of just 41 in that game.
Warren, 23 out of 43 snaps. He led the running backs there. Najee had only 14 offensive snaps in this game. Patterson had 6, and one of those tip balls at the line of scrimmage was intended for Warren. Didn't Warren catch one and get called back on a Dan Moore hold? Was that the play that?
Sounds right.
That's a kind of a funny hold on Dan Moore too. He tried snatch trap. It looked like on that play, and when he went to bury him, it looked like he wanted to try to take his neck, try to pile drive him. He had a weird hold of him around his helmet and neck, and that's why he got flagged for that one. But he had a couple of tosses, obviously a couple of runs, touches in the game, but he did at least lead the running backs in snaps in that game.
Yeah, I imagine a lot of that was the pass down work that he gets, the 2-minute drive, and some of the third down situations Pittsburgh was in. So from a playing snap count standpoint, can't really complain about that too much. But obviously, again, I just kind of refer back to any sort of snap count discussion. Pittsburgh had nothing going offensively, so it's hard to consider snap counts and talk about who should have played more because you're just punting the entire game.
Now, a couple of those runs, once again, on a couple of those tosses, it felt like, they were one block away from springing them. Yeah,
but isn't that always how the run game works, where you're always one block away? I mean, I just feel like you're asking all those guys to do their jobs, and I get that's the intent, but you run into a 5-down front against the Eagles, and you can't complain when you can't run the football. That was my thought going into the game. Next question comes from... Let's see, Steelers by the lake. Are you guys frustrated? Oh, actually, we should also finish up Matt's question. What can they do to get the passing game going besides Pickens returning? More spacing, more horizontal concepts. I don't think Pittsburgh had I got to get through the tape on this one, to be honest. But just off the top, I didn't feel like there was a lot of schemes and concepts and really trying to compensate for the lack of George Pickens.
Yeah, plus they're behind the chains so damn much, too.
Yeah, but even on early downs, I didn't think there were even some of the third and 8. I mean, third and 8 sucks, but like you can have some scheme concepts on third and 8. It's not third and 18, and Pittsburgh still, I thought, struggled there. Let's see. Next question comes from Steelers by the Lake. Are you guys as frustrated as I am with the lack of usage of Darnell Washington? Also, I love how he bullied that DB into the bleachers. That was that end zone trip he took Darius Slay on, who then punched him. Then the NFL said there were no punches thrown by the Eagles. Go figure. A lot of usage, a lot of snap count questions today, Dave. Darnell Washington, are you frustrated like Steelers by the Lake?
I mean, not as far as, I mean, he's actually been used more in the passing game than I thought he would at this time of year. Now, you know, a lot of way they wanted to use him in the past is kind of leak him. You know, they tried early in that game to kind of leak, I think, Freiermuth and somebody else, and the Eagles, you know, they run that so much that the Eagles were, that ended up being one I think Russell Wilson had to just throw away. That one there. I don't think Darnell was in on that. I can't remember if he was in on that one or not. I think Pruitt, didn't they line up Pruitt in the backfield on that? I can't remember.
I don't remember.
But I mean, look, this guy wasn't that huge of a vertical passing threat at Georgia. Most of what he did was of the leak out variety, and heck, they didn't even use him a ton in the red zone at Georgia as well too. And once again, I think they have found ways a couple of times in some games this year to use him a little bit vertically, but it's not like he can run away. You know, he's not going to run away from a lot of people. He's not as effective in the passing game as say a Pat Freiermuth is. I mean, could they stand to get him, you know, a target or two a game? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's possible. But once again, when you're dealing with a small subset of plays like they had against the Eagles yesterday, and you're behind the chains, and it's just it's tough to do. And I do like the way he's developed as a blocker this year. I think he's become a much more accomplished blocker than he was his rookie season, and I don't fault him for trying to take Darius Slay to the parking lot yesterday. I'm sure the coaches, I wouldn't imagine the coaches got on. The coaches probably just said, look, once you get him out of the end zone, let him go, you know. But I think he was trying to make a point at that time, and you know, they're trying to flex their you know, physicality and all. But that's a long way to answer, and I'm not overly disappointed with how he's been used in the passing game so far.
Yeah, I mean, this game in particular, again, you just go back to lack of opportunity, lack of plays. You can't get the run game going, which doesn't open up the boot game, which is where Washington has made most of his catches. I think he only has 3 or 4 receptions this year that have not come off a play-action boot. There was the fade against Denver for his first touchdown, the 2 vertical balls. What game was that? A couple weeks ago, I forget. Maybe the Ravens game, and that's about it. So he's kind of used in that bread and butter bootleg. You know, Russ boots at the flat, and Washington's open. You hit him and get some yak off of that. And he's been asked to pass protect a lot this year, which he's really good at. He's been asked to block in general. Freiermuth standing up, he's not blocking. He's obviously not your blocker type. So in other games before this abysmal loss to the Eagles, you're putting up 44 points, your offense is rolling, the ball's getting spread around, hard to complain about any one guy not getting a lot of targets. So, and then again, this game, 41 plays is kind of my broken record default answer in this one. So we'll see how they respond. Ravens game will be telling. Let's see, next question comes from a comment I'll read from Bryan Jonker, since he's here each week in the live stream. Says both the offense and the defense were bad with all the position groups and got outplayed by Mr. First Round Bounce was outcoached. So that's obviously referring to Mike Tomlin. David Kapoor is here. Hello, David. Says crazy how much we got owned. Yeah, it was 27-13 does not really describe how much Pittsburgh was outclassed and outplayed in this one. Ronald's also asking about Darnell Washington, kind of the same answer before. Brian's talking about why does Najee get more plays than Warren? Why isn't Warren the starter? As Dave kind of mentioned the snap count there. I mean, Najee certainly had his success. I don't know if yesterday was the Najee Harris type of game, you know, because he's more interior. Do you think they should change roles at all, Dave?
Well, I mean, yeah, you saw yesterday. Now, obviously, I think game circumstances, like I said, played into that. And like you said, third down protection and all like that. But, I mean, he easily outsnapped Najee by 9 snaps yesterday. The burst that Warren has is obviously better than that of Najee's, and once again, even though you needed perfect blocking on all of it, I think there was more to be had there had they blocked it up on a couple of those plays to Warren. I'm fine with the way they're using those guys kind of situationally. I mean, should it be more of, I guess, a 50-50 split? I mean, I can understand the theory behind that. I mean, right now your run game as a whole, or at least for the last several weeks, is been they're not finding strides of successfulness, where you see teams like the Eagles and see some of these other teams where they pop 5 here, 4 yards here, 7 here. With the Steelers, it's 2 yards, 2 yards, 5, -1. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So they need whatever they do moving forward, and obviously into the playoffs when it gets colder, they need to start stacking successful runs more regularly, and definitely not until your next to last drive of a ball game where 2 of them get strung together and it's like the best saltine you ever had just because you got 2 of them together. Then the next one you fumble, a toss there. So could they stand to maybe do more of a 50-50 split with those 2 and then leave Patterson, and not give him work? That wouldn't hurt my feelings.
And it's not like those 2 runs you're referring to went for 20 yards. They went for 4 or 5. So again, that's kind of the saltine cracker analogy you make of something that's pretty mediocre just feels so good because it's. I just thought everything was just hard.
It felt like 25-yard runs. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, that's what it felt like. Yeah, but in reality, it's like you get a 4-yard gain on 1st and 10. But that was one of the high marks in the run game. Yeah, I don't have a perfect answer to that. I think there's ebb and flow. I think Warren was hurt to start the year and battled through some stuff. I think Najee's had success. The one thing I will say the last 2 years coming into 2024 is that Pittsburgh's run game started off really, really slow, and they were a faster starting run game and run team this year. But usually the last 2 years, their run game's really hitting their stride late in the season, rushing for 200+ yards in some of these games. It's really kind of been stagnant, this run game. It's been inefficient, and that's even with an offensive line that's been healthy and gotten past all their early season injuries and different O-line combinations, and you were hoping that young group would be able to grow and get cohesion and really start building, and they're really plateauing at best and taking some steps back at worst.
They just haven't, you watch teams like Detroit and all like that with those backs like Gibbs and all like that. Those guys get to the edge and, they can take a crease and they can go, 11, 12, 13 yards. You're just not seeing that with these backs, with the Steelers,
Yeah, it's different style of back, different type of back they look for in Pittsburgh than Detroit, but point taken. Got a super chat here. I apologize, YouTube. It's got a weird button here, so I'm not seeing the super chats when they initially come in, but Superstar SS with a $2 super chat. We thank you for that. He says, 1st and 30 versus 2nd and 20. That's one thing I should have mentioned today. I'm sure I'll get a lot of hate mail from the podcast about me trying to apologize and be a Mike Tomlin apologist, but I think one clear call he missed was, not accepting that was a holding call, right? That would have made it 1st and 30. He declined it to make it 2nd and 20, and the Eagles get that all back on 2nd and 20 for like a 22-yard gain. Well,
his theory's thinking that, we gotta, we're getting it down off the books. We're keeping them behind the chains, and it's 2nd and 20. Surely we'll be able to get off the field in these next 2 plays, and nope.
Yeah, not even next play.
The very next play was and once again, wasn't that one where they caught it 6 yards before the sticks?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was some good yak in this game from the Eagles receivers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I even thought just from a field position standpoint, because the Eagles were around, I think their 40-yard line or so. So 1st and 30, if you back those guys up, you start taking field position battle, assuming you get a stop there. So I think there was even more to play for than just the distance, but in terms of what the distance could be on the other side, had you assumed and got the Eagles to punt after that. So yeah, I think that was a a poor decision by Mike Tomlin, no question. And then one penalty that we didn't mention today because there were so many other ones that overshadowed this one. It's actually going to be something in an article I write tomorrow. But the Zach Frazier tripping call that was called, which the optics look bad.
How many times does that get called, though?
Yeah, almost never. I got to look that up. It's a very rare call. It's a cut block. Frazier's finishing it. He got his kind of rolled up this. He's rolling through the cut, and it tripped. It did trip Dean, but it's not like he stuck his leg out. And I did go back and watch that Chris Boswell play from the Browns game, and Boswell sticking his leg out to try to trip that Jerome Ford return. So, and that was huge because that took what should have been a 2nd and 4 around the Eagles 43 into a 1st and 21, and that was Pittsburgh's last drive of the game. So that actually was a pretty impactful play looking back in hindsight. All right, next question will come from, as I scroll back up through, Dave and I here for about another half hour. Let's see. Carl Ward, help me guys. It says, hey guys, help me understand how the Steelers were able to run the ball more consistently with the backup center in the lineup. Was it just competition? Yeah, it's elements of that when you're facing the Raiders versus the Eagles front. Like I said, I just thought Pittsburgh had a really poor plan in terms of let's get tight and let's get heavy and run into a brick wall. And I said that going into the game. I tweeted it out an hour before the game in that weekly tweet thread I do, a little preview of the game before kickoff, and I think that was proven true. Yeah,
there's such a good front, and as I pointed out in my keys as well too, this is a front of theirs that between the guards, a lot of teams just haven't been able to run successfully against them. That's why, stated on the podcast and in my keys as well too. You got to try to do whatever out on the edge. Our wide receivers, simulated runs like quick screens, wide receiver screens, even tosses. The tosses didn't aggravate me as much as the personnel and the formations that they were using to try to run them out of. And yeah, they just that's a great front, and it's Carter was amazing. He fought off McCormick a couple of times and got himself into a gap and all like that. It's just a hard front to run against in between the guards.
I agree, and I just don't, for the life of me, I can't understand why Pittsburgh made things so hard on themselves. It's already tough enough when you're on the road, you're facing a good defense, you're down George Pickens. The deck is already kind of stacked against you. So why make things tougher on yourself without some easy completions and some of the RPOs and screen game and spread things out, lighten the box a little bit. You got to do some different things in this one. And it's crazy because, and I mentioned this on the podcast, 2 weeks ago against the Bengals, they did a great job not running on that 5-down front the Bengals have, and their front's not nearly as good as Philadelphia's. And so they checked out of those plays. They threw the ball, I think, 5 of the 6 times they saw it. Their only run was a goal line run. So they showed that they can be smart enough to avoid those situations, and yet they returned to their old ways against the Eagles. All right, let's see. Next question will come from, Pancakes. Just Pancakes is his username. Says, if we don't extend Najee, who do you think we should pick as a running back in the draft? I'm probably speak for Dave here, but we're very early into our draft preparation. So I know Dave will say not a first rounder, but and it won't be a Genty because he'll be off the board, I think, by the time Pittsburgh picks. But I really couldn't give you a name there, Pancakes.
Yeah, I can't give you a name yet either. We don't usually crack these things open harder until the Senior Bowl rolls around. And obviously with the Steelers at least in the playoffs, it's going to be at least another week behind schedule, like last year. So, obviously I pay attention to college ball during the season to watch and get familiar with some of the bigger names, but I don't start having a good grasp of the draft class until after both the Shrine and the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I'm over my skis here, but you got Hampton from North Carolina, I think Ollie Gordon from Oklahoma State, Edwards at Michigan. I've looked at a little bit of Nick Singleton from Penn State. I'm not entirely sure who's even draft eligible and declaring, all those kinds of things, so I'm probably getting some stuff wrong, but those are some names. It's a good running back class. I think it's regarded as a pretty good group. We'll see what happens from Najee Harris, and again, we'll have better answers for you in a couple of months.
And we're sending a crew of people again to both the Shrine and the Senior Bowl, so we look forward for that.
Yeah, we're going to wall-to-wall coverage from our team down in Mobile and Frisco. Is that we're still where the Shrine
Dallas,
is being
Frisco,
held? Dallas, Frisco, there you go. Mike Adesso, I know this is putting Yins on the spot, but I think Alex has tracked this. But how many opening drive touchdowns does this team have since Matt Canada was hired? Maybe 3 in, 4 seasons? Since Canada was hired, I don't know. It's probably a little more than 3 or 4. They do not have one this season. Their last one came in Week 16 against the Bengals last year.
And that was the first one in a while,
yes,
too.
I think.
Yeah.
There might have been one in the Packers game or the Titans game. I think Canada had at least 1 or 2 before he was shown the door. But obviously the number is small and point well taken there. Brian Jonker, was that the first time Najee fumbled this year? Didn't he have one? I'm trying to think. He didn't lose one, but I thought maybe he had one. Maybe it was a questionable or reviewed or something. Did he have any fumbles this year, Dave?
I'm trying to remember. Nothing. If he did it, didn't he get it back?
Yeah. I know he didn't lose one. I wonder if he fumbled and someone recovered or went out of bounds, or I'd have to get back to you on that one, Brian. But technically, as we mentioned,
they didn't even charge him for it. Yeah.
Technically does not have a fumble. That went to it was a boarded play. Russell Wilson actually is charged for the fumble and the loss, which is obviously not his fault, but because Najee never actually had possession of the football, they don't give the fumble to Harris. They should. One of those, put that down, Dave, one of those stats that you like to see, like interceptions that aren't the quarterback's fault kind of thing, about fumbles that aren't the quarterback's fault, and that certainly was one of them.
Right.
Let's see. John says, I do not care if O.C. Arthur comes back next year. UseCom1 says, team seems to have 2 personalities. David says, don't you think Patterson saw more snaps after Najee fumbled? Did Najee have any snaps after the fumble? I don't think he did, but there were, of course, only how many snaps after the Najee fumble?
4 more plays after the Najee fumble, right? One more drive, right?
Yeah, it was a couple more, because they actually got something going on that ensuing drive. They got out past midfield, and then you had the 3 plays after the penalty.
Oh, that's right. They had
trip.
7 plays on the final possession.
I don't know if Najee was out there for the start of that next drive. They were passes to
right.
Calvin Austin, and then Patterson had a run. So I don't know if Najee had a snap or was out there or what, but again, we're talking a handful of plays. All right, let's see what else we got. We got CHRP. How do you guys feel about Arthur Smith's pass scheme? Seems really hit or miss, mostly miss against good pass defenses. Didn't feel good yesterday. Still need to go through the tape. There's been some good things. I think against man coverage, I think Pittsburgh's had more success, more zone-heavy, more match-heavy teams. I think Pittsburgh's had more problems.
I'd like to see what he can offer on offense with a better receiving core.
Yeah, that's fair. But again, sometimes much of a coach is like, how do you handle when the chips are down? Like, a lot of coaches can look good when they got a lot of talent out there. It's harder to screw those things up. I think some of those coaches make their money whenever you're dealing with adversity. You know, how does Aaron Glenn in Detroit, yesterday aside, giving up a bunch of points to the Bills, but the defense has still been competitive in a lot of ways despite just a cruel amount of injuries. To me, that often can be the mark of where a coach really can shine. Let's see, what else do we have here? We got Quality Colas here. He's a longtime listener of these live streams. Says, hello, Dave and Alex. We appreciate you being here, man. Let's see, any other kind of different questions. Mike Adesso, what do you think about the fourth quarter punt decision from Tomlin? Also declining the hold call to make it 1st and 30, and then give up 19 yards on the next 2nd and 20 play. They gave up more than that. They gave back the first down on that one. I think that 19-yarder was later in the game on that 21-play drive the Eagles had. Talked about it in the podcast this morning, Dave. What do you think about Tomlin's decision to punt on 4th and 7?
Yeah, look, I mean, it fit. You understand it from a fact of his history and his MO and kind of the situation at the time. It's 10 something left in the clock. You're thinking, okay, let's pin him back here. I'll trust my defense. Surely we'll have at least 2 more offensive, if not 3 offensive possessions at this point in the game. yada yada. We've heard him talk in the past. I trust my defense. He probably high-fived himself after that punt was inside the 10 and thought, okay, here we go. TJ Watt's going to make a play and all. Personally, I would have went for it there on fourth and what was it, 7?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that. Like I said on the podcast today, I'd be lying if I was sitting there super upset about the decision to punt. I was questioning. I was wondering. I know initially my thought was, okay, it's fourth and how many yards? I wasn't totally clear of the yardage needed. And then I saw 4th and 7. I went, yeah, I don't love the idea of going 4th and 7. So I really didn't have a true emotion. And then right after that was the Jalen Carter penalty. And then I thought Pittsburgh was going to keep possession of the football. And so I was like, okay, well, they didn't go for it, but ball don't lie kind of thing. And then
come back from commercial break. And
yeah. It's Jalen Hurts out there. So at that point, I just kind of was wrapped up in, okay, what's going on right now? And then 21 play drive to end things from there. So I never really kind of got to really think about, I guess, the call. But I'll be honest, where I totally get the idea of like, let's go for it. But the offense was miserable. I would have had zero confidence in them actually getting a 4th and 7 on that play. Hindsight 2020, but I was not super upset about the decision to punt there. All right, let's see what else do we have. A couple more questions. Did Herbig get any game time? He did. I don't know what the exact snap count on that. Probably 20.
32
more.
snaps.
Yeah, because obviously once Watt went out. Probably would have been around 20 had Watt finished that game out. So, yeah, he played. I don't know if he had a real impact in this game, but he did play. We got Daniel Berry Sports Highlights in the chat. He's always here, so we appreciate that. Brian Junker, how many field goals does Boswell get these next 3 games? I'm hoping for at least 7. That'll set the NFL record for single-season field goals. Obviously, I'd love for all those to be touchdowns.
I'd rather have those be touchdowns.
Yes, okay. I walked myself into that one, but... to just put a number on it, that is the record he's chasing right now, set by David Akers in 2011 with the San Francisco 49ers. How many does he actually get? He had 6 against Baltimore last time. Will he get 6 again? I doubt it, but I think there have been 5 games this year, Dave, where Boswell has outscored the rest of the Steelers, including yesterday. Boswell had, 7 points, the 2 field goals and the extra point, and Pittsburgh had... the rest of the team, a lone touchdown, 6 points. So that's the 5th time that's happened this year. Any idea how many field goals he kicks next 3 games?
8.
8. And that'll be the record. So that's what we're shooting for. All right, let's see. What else do we have here? We got Jared Mayak in the chat. He says, thanks for the Q&A, fellas. Mon Adams looked like he was blocked into the long snapper on the penalty. I know it's a focus now with officials, but it didn't seem that egregious. Tough break for Adams. Yeah,
we talked about that this morning. Yeah.
Try to put myself in his shoes. I don't know. Like I said, they're so protective of the snappers. You're saying, Jared, and he did run him over. I know he's kind of blocked. It's a whole mess in those A gaps on field goal protect and field goal rush. I just know if you run the snapper over and you're standing there on top of him, you're going to get called for it.
Yeah, it felt ticky-tack to me.
Yeah. Let's see. Walter's got some thoughts here. I'm trying to see if I can see a comment to shout out. He said the tripping was questionable. There was no wrong call in the 1st and 30, 2nd and 10. Yeah, there was probably no clearly wrong call, but I don't know. I certainly would have gone for 1st and 30, accepted that penalty on that decision there. Let's see. I know Alex doesn't mind the pitch out, and neither do I, but I do have an issue with 5-6 pitch outs in one game. I don't even have that necessarily. Again, some of them were the shorter toss variety that's kind of become more popular this year. I knew that you could not run up the gut on the Eagles, and so I was okay with trying to run more to the edges, and there are only so many run schemes in the world that can provide that, and toss game is obviously one of them. I just don't know why Pittsburgh did it at literally every single time, 12 or 13 personnel.
Right. And see, this isn't a team that runs like that traditional, outside zone where you see them all in the Congo line and all like that,
But Arthur Smith's bread and butter is zone outside zone.
But we hardly see it, though.
Yeah, I don't have the exact charting on that. Sometimes, inside zone, outside zone, it's not dramatically different, but we've not seen a ton of outside zone this year, which is, I don't know, reflective of the running backs they have or something else, but I agree with you there. Mike's saying McCormick did the butt block again. I have not gotten back to the tape. Have you seen the butt block by McCormick?
No.
Okay, I'll be looking for that. And again, that is taught by Pat Meyer. That is an actual technique, as funny as it looks, and it worked the first time. And there was a similar situation where I thought he was going to do it a couple weeks ago, but he ended up just trying to stay square and front-facing. So I will certainly be looking for that, Mike. I'm sure. Did you see it, Mike, or did Brandon Thornton tweet that, or is it out there? But yeah, I will go look for it. And do you guys think Mason McCormick has been good enough to keep the starting job in future years? I like what I've seen from him on tape. Yeah, I think McCormick will start in 2025. Where it goes from there, not going to predict, but he should start a right guard next year.
Yeah, look, this wasn't his or Frazier's best game as run blockers. I thought they did okay in pass protection, both of them. This was not a good game in the run blocking department for this unit.
CHRP, Arthur Smith is way better than Canada, but he has to be able to adjust when key players like Pickens get injured. Didn't seem like he did that last game, just run Najee into a brick wall and boots to Van. Yeah, I don't think... I knew this game was going to require like A-plus level coaching to overcome the injuries, and I think there is a talent gap between the Eagles and the Steelers, especially with the injuries that Pittsburgh had in this one offensively, defensively. I thought they got, and again, I have not really gotten to dive into the All-22, but like maybe C-plus level game plan defensively and like D- with maybe F offensively. And that's obviously not close to what was required, I think, to win this game where Pittsburgh had to really win with scheme, and they did not.
Right. Agreed.
Let's see. I thought Dean Lowry had a good game. He's way more noticeable than Loudermilk. What are your thoughts on Lowry and Loudermilk, Dave?
I haven't. I've only watched a handful on the defensive side, the all 22.
Even in general, just for the season, is there a guy that's made more plays? Look out to you a little bit more.
He's been inactive a couple of times, has he not? And he's a guy that gets stalemated real easily in the pass protection. I think he had a little bit better push in this game on a couple of snaps that I remember from the TV tape. But this is an also ran type of guy. I mean, ideally you would. You want Ogunjobi back in there, and you want your normal guys in there, and you'd much rather be in a situation where probably Lowry's on the inactive list.
Yeah, I think they're similar players. They're stubby 5 techs, 4 eyes that are here to really play the run and be a base end. Loudermilk's a base right end, and Lowry's a base left end that plays some backup nose tackle whenever Adams was out. I think Lowry's offering a little more pass rush juice in terms of the pressures I've charted. He, as you mentioned, had a good bull rush yesterday, but neither calling card are going to be in terms of rushing the passer. So they're actually pretty similar players overall. I think Loudermilk has gotten better. He's improved his pad level over time, become more consistent, has become a more focused pass rusher, not trying to do the cross chops and more finesse moves he was trying early in his career. But he's got obviously a pretty low ceiling as a backup rotational end, and Lowry's in a pretty much the same boat.
Is one or both going to be on the 53 next year? Loudermilk or Lowry? Well,
Loudermilk's not under contract, so there's that. Lowry signed a 2-year deal. I think Lowry will be back. Loudermilk, we'll see what happens to Ogunjobi. What do they add? I know you're asking the question. I think Lowry will be. I'll say Loudermilk won't, but that one is real. Could go either way. All right, what else do we got here? LB says, what do you guys think of our cornerbacks? Is Joey Porter overrated? Do we need a first-round corner?
They need to invest in a corner in the draft, for sure.
How early do you think? Is there such thing as too early for the position?
Assuming they're going to be picking near the bottom of the first round, you're probably going to end up getting something in the second round.
Yeah. The way that I'm trying to phrase it is is it a crazy idea to take a first round corner?
No.
Okay. Yeah, because at this point it's impossible to predict. I should say, is it a good idea because we just don't know names and a million other variables. But I guess the way to couch things is is it a crazy idea to take a position, or is there a ceiling of how early you take a position? And corner, yeah, I wouldn't put a cap on it. May not be the number one need, Dante Jackson, I still liked him more than most. It's not just off the 5 interceptions. I'm not just box score scouting. I've just watched the tape throughout the season, but he has waned. He had a much better start to the season. He's played through a shoulder issue. He's got a back issue now. That's probably contributing factors.
He's better in zone than he is man.
Yeah, so, we'll see if he comes back, and that'll help determine a lot about the need of, one thing, and I don't like to make these decisions based off of just like, I don't want the turnover to keep happening, but Pittsburgh's had a different starting outside corner every single season the last at least 3 years. It was Levi Wallace, Patrick Peterson, to Dante Jackson. Do you want to make it 4 years in a row? I mean, you can if it's the right decision, but you'd like at some point to get some stability and have like the two same returning corners, from 1 year to the next.
Right.
All right, let's see what else we got. Hoppel Mop, I think that's a familiar name that hasn't been around in a little bit, so appreciate you being here. He says, I feel like Najee took the wrong hole a few times on your recently posted video. I'm not entirely sure which video you're referring to. If you can refresh my memory, I had the one about Russ recently. I'm trying to think if I had other ones. But let me know. We can talk about it. Infinity, our friend Infinity, says, am I wrong to dislike Tomlin's comment on Pat McAfee agreeing the NFL is doing a good job at punishing the Steelers with scheduling? I wouldn't make much out of that. I think you're just having some fun banter in that kind of conversation. So I don't think Tomlin was trying to make like a serious statement about it all.
I think it was half serious. Yeah. I think it was just kind of playing along too. But right. But on the flip side, I don't think he would be mad if someone with the mouthpiece and the level of the mouthpiece that McAfee has continue to hit on how the schedule has worked out for the Steelers this year. So I don't think Mike Tomlin is losing sleep over it, but on the flip side, he's not going to tell somebody to not bitch about it that's got got a proper platform. How's that sound?
I agree. And Tomlin takes the right strategy of not using those as excuses publicly, and because there's no use crying about it. But I mean, I'm sure if you gave him the truth serum, he dislikes the schedule that Pittsburgh is in, as he should. Who would like the schedule? Who likes playing 3 games in 11 days where you're playing on the road at Baltimore, coming off the Eagles game, and then hosting the Chiefs? Like, it's not conducive to success. But I will say, I mean, the Ravens are going to be in the same exact boat, Dave. They played on Sunday, they're hosting Pittsburgh Saturday, and then they play on Christmas Day, traveling to Houston. Now, that's, you could say it's an easier schedule, facing the Giants and the Texans, fair, but they're on that same timeline, and that's a team you're directly competing with in the AFC North, and you came into this week with a 2-game lead on Baltimore. So Tomlin also likes to talk about, we're all in the same boat, and Baltimore's in a similar boat right now, and so Pittsburgh really can't have too many excuses here if it doesn't go their way.
Right.
All right, got time for a couple more questions. Be sure to get those in and hit that like button. We'll do one last call out for that. And I got a $2 super chat that just came in, so I appreciate that from Matt, who says, has Russ done enough to warrant paying him? I always make those decisions when the season ends, when I have no new information on the field that can be acquired, because things can still change. But based on where I think it's tracking and trending, despite yesterday's game and the loss, I would say yes. Now, when you say paying him, the question is how much do you pay him and structure a contract? That's really the $1 million or $40 million question. But in terms of like, are you interested in bringing that guy back? I would say yes.
So far, yes. Come get me, though, after these next 3 games, and technically at least the next 4 games, because they're in the playoffs, and let's hope at least maybe 5 games. If we're getting that far talking about watching 5 more Russell Wilson games, then something's probably gone right on offense, right?
Yeah,
with 3 games left, and obviously they're going to play a 4th one because they're in the playoffs. So far, so good. I mean, this game obviously against the Eagles didn't go the way that they needed it to, and his adjusted net yards per passing attempt number I think was something like 5.8, which is obviously not acceptable. But he's had a couple of decent, more than decent games. I think he's got a good grasp of the offense, but. You got some tough games coming up here, and assuming Cincinnati could very well be eliminated here in this next week, but you got to think that they're going to give the Steelers something in that finale, regardless if they're still in this thing. And these next three we'll learn a lot more down the stretch here.
Yeah, I do wonder, would the Bengals be in position to not play anybody? Would they? And I'm 20 steps down the road, but would they play Chase, knowing we got to pay Chase? And would Chase want to play, saying I've done more than I need to do to show that I'm going to get paid? I want to make sure I don't catch an injury in Week 18.
Well, I think that the key thing is does Chase want to play Chase, and does T. Higgins want to play T. Higgins?
Fair. So again, that's all down the road, but it is a thought. I mean, they're not going to like rest starters in terms of like voluntarily, let's go sit our guys the way that Baltimore did last year because they had everything locked up for the postseason. But yeah, you do wonder. And even just like some of the injuries, this guy's hurt. We're not going to play him in this game. If it was a meaningful game, maybe we put him out there. But, Chase, whatever, making up a name, Chase Brown has a hamstring tweak. We're not going to test it. And why even, risk a further injury that bleeds into the offseason? So, yeah, that's a fair point. It's even hard to evaluate Russ yesterday. I mean, I barely have commentary on his performance because there really just is not a lot on his plate to evaluate.
Right.
It wasn't good, but it just one of those games. Let's see what else do we have. Kevin AA, Steelers are 31st in rushing efficiency. Some positives coming out of the season, but that's got to be viewed as an enormous failure, right? Yeah, I mean, I think
their efficiency's got it. Like I said earlier in this, we got to see, their expected points out, whatever metric you want to use, successful runs, EPA, efficiency. We just need to see a higher level of consistency of it, and not get excited when you have 2 4-yard runs, 5-yard runs back to back in the fourth quarter there. We have seen some bright spots at times with this thing, but just not enough consistency overall, and that's why they're, that's why they're in the bottom of the league. When it comes to some of the advanced metrics, with running games, it should be better than what it is.
Yeah, I didn't expect Pittsburgh to have the most efficient running game, from kind of a ground and pound style to Najee Harris, and just not really lending itself to being super crisp and averaging 5 yards a pop. But yeah, I expected certainly more, and they've really kind of faded since in terms of efficiency. It's really kind of been, like I said, plateauing or regressing. So that's not where Pittsburgh wanted to be, no question about that. Let's see a couple more questions. Trying to find one from Walter Worthy, more of a comment, but we'll address it. This defense is feast or famine. Not sure if it's a recency bias, but on 3rd and long, 7+ does not seem to make any difference to 3rd and short. Yeah, I mean, yesterday, I agree. They were Eagles with 10-17 on 3rd down, and they were getting some long conversions. I think Pittsburgh has cleaned things up. They had that stretch early in the season with those back-to-back losses, which against the Colts and Cowboys, where they were abysmal in 3rd and long. But they cleaned things up. They got better, and hopefully go back to that.
Yeah, look, advanced metrics. I love the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat, and up until, I don't know what it was yesterday. It wasn't great, obviously, yesterday. But it'd been in the neighborhood of where you want that thing. The sacks obviously are down, but the turnovers are, they've definitely had their fair share of takeaways, and I'd much rather have a takeaway than I would a sack. There was a couple of games in a row where they had those red zone issues on the defensive side of football, right? And they weren't, obviously, what were they in the red zone yesterday?
3 of 6, but the Eagles had one of those as a kneel down at the end of the game, kind of like Pittsburgh the week before. So I really consider that at least 3 of 5.
Right, and you might as well give them a negative anyway because they let a 20-something play drive. Yeah,
they don't get credit for that stop. Yeah.
Right. So, obviously a negative yesterday when it comes to the defense, but yeah, they need to get these guys healthy on the defensive side of football and get back to kind of playing the way they were in the middle of the season there.
Yeah, I agree. Pittsburgh, in 3 of their 4 losses, including yesterday, they have won the turnover battle. Got to be the most losses by a team that has won the turnover battle this season. They lost it in the Cowboys game, the Browns game, and the yesterday's game, where they won the turnover battle, but they lost the game. Only the Colts game where they lost the turnover battle and lost the game. So Pittsburgh plus 18 for the season, tied with Buffalo, best in the NFL. It's one reason why they're 10-4. But, again, just could not capitalize on the takeaways yesterday. You got 2 great opportunities. You get 3 points out of it. Not going to win you many games against quality opponents. Time for just a couple more questions. And Pancake says, when playing good teams like the Ravens or Eagles, every down feels like a struggle, barely gaining 2 to 3 yards and then losing some yards. Am I wrong here? What are we lacking the most on offense? Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a tougher challenge when you're facing those tougher teams than it is going to be some of the lower caliber squads. But yeah, I think Pittsburgh has to do things to make things easier. And Arthur Smith has done that in some regards overall for the season. But yesterday, it was not evident one bit. Everything was hard. And in a game like that, you got to make things easy on an offense that's already, down a top guy in George Pickens.
We didn't even get to see this team move. There's been several games this year where they've moved the football down the field. They just sucked when they got in the red zone, couldn't put it in. Yesterday, we didn't even see them really put any kind of real drive together. So you need more, down to down consistency, and something you and I have harped on forever. The faster starts. They got to come out of the locker room, and they only have 3 first quarter touchdowns all season. As we mentioned, they don't have a single opening drive touchdown. You get into the playoff times, you might be able to get away with that once, but you're going to have to start finding more down to down, possession to possession type consistency, and you certainly can't have 5 3 and outs or something duplicating what you had against the Eagles and all that. That's just simply not going to fly.
Yeah, I agree, and especially as you mentioned on the podcast, Dave, for this Ravens game, this offense has to pick up a defense. It's going to be feeling it and pretty sore. You can't have your defense be out there for 80 plays trying to tackle Derrick Henry and chase around Lamar Jackson. So they got to possess the ball, they got to convert on third down, they got to be able to kind of get something back to the defense they could not do yesterday. And again, I've started mentioning the stat, and I'm going to repeat it a million times over. Last 5 first quarters of their last 5 playoff losses, they've been outscored. Pittsburgh has 66-0. And so Tomlin can talk about that we're not defined by slow starts all he wants, and I understand his overall point and message, but you're defined by 5 straight playoff losses, and being down 66-0 in those combined games is a certainly big reason why.
Look, if they don't run 59 or 60 offensive plays against the Ravens, they're probably not going to win that game.
Yeah, it wouldn't feel too good. I mean, just from that one data point.
It's a loose.
Yeah, I get your point. If they're not on the field that often, then they're not possessing the football, they're not converting, and they're probably not going to win the game. How many plays did they run to beat Baltimore before?
Let's see. How many did they run?
Is that a good number to shoot for? Whatever that number was, I truthfully don't remember. I don't remember charting that game. I think it felt pretty even in play count, maybe on both sides. I want to say, but could be wrong.
Total offensive plays: Ravens 54, Steelers 74.
No, I was totally wrong. Okay, then yeah, let's go duplicate that.
Yeah, they had 34 pass attempts in that game. And they had, 34 rush attempts and 36 pass attempts in that game. And he was sacked 4 times on top of it. So 40 and 34, it's 74.
Yeah, 30 and, you said 40 and 34?
What did I say? I said 34 and 40.
Yeah, 74. How was their time of possession? Obviously, it was very good based off of those numbers, but what was their TOP?
36-22.
Yeah, really would love to replicate that. Obviously, that increases your odds of winning, but just helps out your defense on a short week. A couple more questions we'll get through pretty quickly here. Mike Adesso, Steelers only going to get 30 seconds on Hard Knocks this week. It's probably going to be all Baltimore. It'll be certainly the Ravens only got 30 seconds last week. You'll see probably a lot of Baltimore to make up for it, but I think we'll get a good 15 or so minutes from this Steelers game.
Yeah, it probably won't be as centric as it was the first 2, but Mike Tomlin's great television.
Yeah, and it's still Steelers, Eagles, and yeah, not divisional, but for the Giants game itself, it's a pretty boring game. And then get some Bengals talk. Yeah, I think it'll be split, I think, pretty evenly because all those teams played yesterday, and all were playing. The Ravens had the bye week before, so I think it'll get a pretty good split across the board. All right, we'll get to a couple more to wrap things up. Connor Schaefer, do you think Tomlin is cautious against taking too many chances early in the game? Our offense always seems to be very predictable and safe for the first few drives of a game compared to later drives. I mean, they have taken some shots. That's a pretty broad.
I mean, the first possession, they and that felt very predetermined because there were three guys around Jefferson on that. That felt a very predetermined deep shot on third down yesterday.
Yeah, I really want to go back and watch that one to see what Russ was seeing, because it certainly did not look open, but I don't know if that was just Fangio's coverages messing with his head or whatever. But even in some other games, they've come out more throwing that Bengals game like I talked about. So, yeah, I think it's certainly in the past with Pickett last year and years like that, Pittsburgh had a very simple game plan of our offense. Okay, just don't go screw it up. Let our defense go out there and win, and we'll win the 17-13 slugfest. I think that's changed a little bit with Russ especially. But I mean, I think the overall point is Tomlin still believes that his defense is the greatest strength on this team, and they're going to lead this team to victory in most cases. All right, what else do we got here? Thoughts on Joey Porter Jr. From this game? Not a good game, but I guess wasn't awful in this game. Thought he competed with Brown fairly well. For the season, just find more. Just can't stack those bad plays, and those multi-game penalties is my key for Porter Jr.
Yep.
Let's see. Russ's worst game, didn't hit one downfield pass, all overthrown or underthrown, combined with Smith's Canada-style game. What's a chance we're dropping all three? That's from MC. What are the odds, Dave, that Pittsburgh loses to the Ravens on Saturday and the Chiefs on Christmas Day?
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and guarantee 2 wins if that's what you're asking. They're tough ball games, and I would feel a little bit better if the defense hadn't been out on the field for 180 snaps against the Eagles for sure. And had they played better on top of it. And you got 2 teams that got a lot to play for, obviously, in this game, and the Ravens look like obviously had an easier time, looked like a more cohesive unit on both sides of the football. There's a reason the betting public and the line is what it is right now. I think at like 6.5. It's going to be a tough game, but these 2 teams know each other, and anytime these 2 teams get together, anything can happen. The Steelers have had obviously their number for a while, and then you survive this, and you got the Chiefs, who the Chiefs have not been the normal Chiefs, but they convert on third down, and they do some of the little things that win ball games. So is it plausible that they lose these next 2 games? The answer to that question, unfortunately, is yes, it's plausible.
Agreed. Well said. I don't have a whole lot more to add. I really don't know what percentage to put on it. I really don't have a method to quantify that, but it is a real possibility. If someone told me from the future that came back in time just to tell me this important information about the Pittsburgh's next 2 games and so they lost them both, I'd say, yeah, not shocked by that. I'd like to split. I mean, obviously you just want to beat Baltimore, and then you take care of the division. Right. So, but is there a real chance? Like, we're not even saying, anything's possible. Like, no, it's a very real possibility that Pittsburgh loses both, given the injuries, given the opponents, given the road game, given the short weeks. 4 days to prepare for Patrick Mahomes is horrible. So, yeah, a real possibility, but we'll take it one game at a time. Let's see, anything else here very, very quickly. Dave says, Steelers shut Barkley down and made Hurts beat them. Take your hat off and hand it to him. Like Dave said, they were close to dragging the Eagles down into the mud. Najee's fumble ended that dream. You do wonder what would have happened. I just never felt like, even on that drive where it's 2013 and Pittsburgh could have tied it up, I just didn't feel like Pittsburgh was really going to win this game.
Look, I found myself thinking, I can't believe they're in this ball game the way they are at halftime. Mm-hmm. I was thinking to myself, Mike Tomlin's got him right where he wants him. Barkley, at that time, you didn't know what was going on with Barkley or whether or not he'd be back at that time. My mind did start thinking, like it's thought a couple of times in some games this year. Damn, how they, they've dragged, like he just said, dragging them down into the mud for another rock fight. Now, that rock fight didn't last very long in the second half, obviously, because the Eagles, their first 2 possessions, 2 of 3 possessions got them 10 points, and The Steelers only had the ball twice, and once Najee fumbled the football, though, you kind of that was it. You knew that was it at that point. But I almost took my hat off to them to still being in the game at halftime, the way things had gone, because they were severely outplayed, in the first half of that game. And but yeah, it definitely got away from in the second half, and attrition took over. And like we said, like I said on the podcast, like he just said there, was you got to try to make Jalen Hurts beat you. And they were more prepared. They came out. They killed the Steelers using empty. They knew the Steelers were going to try to shut down Barkley early, and they made the changes and said, okay, you're going to do that? Well, we're just going to pick you apart. Pick you apart in a passing game. We're going to do a lot of it in empty, and they did. So you do take your hat off and hand it to them.
Yeah, like I said, I thought Pittsburgh, you can't accomplish everything. You can't shut everything down. They were running some more pressure packages too, I think, to try to help contain Hurts the way that they did against Daniels and Lamar with those 5-man rushes that were really effective. That opens up one-on-one on the back end, and their receivers are really good and make plays. And the Eagles showed that, yeah, you can be kind of an old-school mentality of like, hey, let's run the ball a ton, and the Eagles lead the NFL in rushing attempts. They're well over 500 now this season, but also there's a ton of value of having some dudes at receiver and not just one, and some weapons to throw to when teams do try to stack the box or take away your run game. So, yeah, I think the Eagles are really, again, the ideal version of who Pittsburgh wants to be, and hopefully Pittsburgh can one day get there. All right, Dave, that's going to wrap things up. Appreciate everybody here in the chat. As Mike said, our last stream and through the holidays, so Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everybody. Appreciate you guys all being here in the chat and asking some great questions. Those who donated and sent super chats, we do thank you guys as well. Dave, as always, thank you for being here.
And thank you for moderating in perfect fashion like you usually do. Thank you for everybody that showed up. That means a lot. Happy holidays to everybody. If you go to the site, thank you. If you listen to the podcast, thank you. And if all you do is just attend these, thank you. So peace and love, everybody, and get excited for these two games tonight.
Yeah, it'll be an archive version. Yeah, I think someone said I think Mike said the Bears ran a 4th-and-1 toss. So that was an ode to Arthur Smith, apparently. And it did not work. And so that's really an ode to how yesterday went. Anyway, on that note, appreciate you guys being here. There'll be an archive version of this on Steelers Depot in a little bit. Be sure to check out the site. Have a lot of coverage for you and these quick turnarounds for the Ravens game on Saturday and the Chiefs game on Christmas Day. So thank you guys so much for being here, for listening.